Good to go.
Cool. Hopefully you see our full screen slide.
Yes, looks good.
Perfect. So today we're talking about the dark web and anonymity or privacy. I should have just said privacy, it would have been a lot easier to pronounce and spell. So today I'll be presenting, and with me is also Justin Denton. We are going to cover a whole bunch of different stuff about what the dark web is, what that actually means, and some facts about privacy and how you can better protect yourself while on the web. We're going to show you some tips and tricks about how that kind of all dovetails together. Sort of piggybacking on the first part of the series, which was how to protect your network. Now we're going to show you how to get around your network, or conversely, how to be more private while on your own network or somebody else's network. A few quick disclaimers. Technology is inherently neutral, meaning it can be used for good things by good people, or it can be used by bad things for bad people. It all depends on what your intent of or using the technology is for. The entire presentation today is more of like a FYI type thing. It's more for informational and technical training purposes only. Don't use it to do anything bad or unethical or illegal. And at times we're going to pull back the veil and show you some stuff that you might not have seen before, some of the behind-the-scenes ideas and methods and tips and tricks on how to do stuff differently while on the web. Today's agenda, we're going to take you back.
Yep, back into the 80s and 90s where kind of the hacking mentality started. If you've ever seen some of the Steve Jobs documentaries and things like that, or learned about Steve Wozniak, a lot of those really started building the whole computer infrastructure back in the early 80s, and it started through hacking. We're also going to dive into it fairly deep and actually see, what all is out there. There's a lot of other things out there on the internet that you don't even know about, that you may never have had access to. We're going to show you how to get those tools and get access to those resources. We're going to also show how to kind of hide yourself on the internet, just to keep yourself safe, and also make sure people don't have access to your data. Then also kind of how to navigate and prevent some wrong turns. And then we'll go through some of the tools on how to become a hacker and what tools you may be able to use to at least learn the hacking mentality and protect yourself in the long run.
So a little funny antidote. I guess this is more true in the past, where when you're on the internet, nobody knew who you were. But nowadays, with modern technology, without doing any sort of privacy or protecting, it's really easy to find out who you are, especially with social media out there and what you do on the internet and while you're doing it on the internet. It's relatively simple to track those things and figure people out without any sophisticated tools.
Yeah. So, and depending on how old everybody is, you may have heard of dial-up internet. We didn't have broadband all these years. Then also a thing called the bulletin board system. This is back in the day when everything kind of started. This is how we were able to communicate and be able to do good and bad things. So we talked about back in the 80s, really the first pieces of the internet, you could say, is just being able to be interconnected with other people, and be able to do that, you had to dial up into something. Before American Online and CompuServe or Prodigy, or depending on if you use dial-up, and you had to go even further back to what was called a bulletin board system. So you'd sit home, and I kind of phrase it as a computer. You had a computer, you could only do so much, and then you decided to go out and buy a modem, because they didn't typically come with your computer back then. And after you got your modem, you were a little bored because you didn't know exactly what to do, so you started figuring out how you could call into bulletin board systems. These would typically advertise in magazines to be able to get subscribers, per se. So essentially, you had your computer plus a modem plus boredom equals fun in the hacker mentality, because now you've got something to do to keep your time occupied. Bulletin board system was also where everybody collaborated. So if you think of it as the first Facebook or the first LinkedIn or something of that nature, everything became more graphically enhanced in today's technology, but back then we used to use all of this old 8-bit ASCII, ANSI type characters. This is an 8-bit drawing that was used on a bulletin board system. And the cool thing is if you wanted to, these things are still alive to this day. The people that are really into this still run these even today. Oh, tonight. Okay. So what happened? You typically had a bunch of people that first dialed into the internet. When you did that, you're a little skittish about sharing who you were, but as that mentality evolved, people wanted to meet in person. When they met in person, they became these computer user groups. Typically, when I did these, back in the day, we'd meet at Steak and Shake, Ponderosa, Bonanza, Smolder restaurants, and just hang out. But at the same time, we had a differing mentality because typically the bulletin board user groups were, and back then, were ran by people in their mid-30s, mid-40s. And I was young. I was 18, 16 at times, and I brought my friends, and we didn't technically agree. We had that rebellious attitude, so we kind of formed what would be called the anti-user group, hacker groups. We would typically go to these user groups and cause mischief, cause issues, and then at the same time, we took that back online to cause more problems online. So you can look at it as BBF started, people started meeting in person. We really started to figure out who those other people were, and then really find out that we were totally different people than what we thought we were. And at the same time, we figured we would take over that environment by causing mischief. So then essentially user groups spawned a collective thinking and planning. So once I felt like I wasn't the only person out there, and there was other people that kind of wanted to think like myself, we started planning. And you know, more people together, more of a collective, started to actually think about you know, what could we do. And what happened was competitions pretty much ensued. There's a lot of environments that were built upon this. So one of the biggest hacking conferences was DEF CON. And DEF CON started really where a bunch of people, very similar to this picture, got into a room and tried to hack various bulletin board systems or networks or phone systems at the time. And essentially, you did that not for monetary gain, but just to be able to brag among your peer group. So from that, a bunch of competitions spawned. Not only at the hacker conferences where thousands of people showed up in Las Vegas and spent an entire weekend trying to hack various networks and prove who got the biggest hack, but people took that offline and formed smaller teams that would actually start to do the same thing. What ended up happening was we found flaws, and we were able to expose flaws, some for fun, some for personal gain. So hacking went into the mainstream. Once it went off bulletin board, we've got American Online. One of the tools that went mainstream was AOL Hell. This is one of the first tools that used kind of a publicly wide system that allowed to somewhat act like a computer hacker. All the official hacker underground was based off the bulletin board system activity, but what made hacking just in general more public and mainstream was once AOL, or American Online, was created, and someone built a tool called AOL Hell, which then started mass recruiting people into the hacker culture. So since then, it's kind of basically pushed the hacker culture into more of a social aspect. So you've got a picture of Anonymous right there. That's their logo. They associate themselves to Guy Fawkes from V. The core values really haven't changed from the back in the day. It's essentially to, one, have fun, and two, try to prove that you're right by finding flaws. People still exploit this for personal gain because obviously it's still there. So if it's there, people will do it. But in all reality, it's just to drive more awareness among the communities. So essentially, social media has continued to draw this. So think of this as American Online on steroids. Now we've built this up to be so much of a publicly accessible mentality that everybody's drawing to this. As you can see, there's 1.69 million followers alone just on Anonymous's Twitter account, and this grows on a daily basis. So it's not just like 10 people, 100 people, even 1,000 people are doing this. There's tons of people that are interested in this, and they keep getting drawn into it.
And I think with a lot of the stuff going on in terms of like the news, every now and then you'll hear like Anonymous uncovered this or posted this or whatnot, and so it could be a good thing and a bad thing, I guess. It's a double-edged sword. So how much do you want to get into to prove someone's right or wrong, or get somebody in trouble or overthrown or whatnot?
Yeah, one of the things I used to do back in when I was at IBM was I leveraged computer hacking technologies to prove whether or not people are doing their jobs, essentially. And you could use a website called securityfocus.com, which would allow you to give you the exploits on various operating systems, so you could hack into computers and find out what's on the user's file system. So at one point I wanted to prove whether or not my night shift was actually doing their job. So I used an exploit that was off of securityfocus.com and rooted into somebody's computer and found out that they were installing Doom servers and playing Doom or Quake all night long rather than actually working. So with social media, we found a new cause. It was hacktivism. They tried to build like more of a culture around it. So now we have like this publicly, widely accessible media that's occurring, and everybody's getting they're getting a lot of press now. So people are actually spreading this like wildfire because it's now born in the internet age. Hacktivism was born once the internet was really built out. Essentially, we're going to have cyber attacks. There's some with a purpose. There's some attacks that are going on just to prove that the federal government's websites are not secure and to drive awareness to the public to say, hey, these sites aren't secure. We as a public should push that forward and make our country more secure. But then there's some that are just there because they're doing personal fun, where they're having a competition with some friends and trying to see what they could hack in, and the biggest hack wins. And then also some are for personal gain. You've seen where people are stealing credit cards to hack into Target to steal the credit card information. That's not for fun. They're actually pinpointing what they want, and when that item is of monetary value, then usually they're exploiting that to be able to buy and sell or run up your credit card bill.
Mm-hmm. And so kind of switching gears. So how deep can you get? So some of the hacking collectives and stuff like that will communicate on the internet through what's called like the deep web or even the dark web. Essentially, as we know it, there's the surface web, which is our traditional, Facebook.com, Yahoo's, etc. Anything that essentially a search engine can find. The way search engines work is it's called a web crawler, where it's a robot that clicks on links, and every time it sees a new link, it clicks it, logs how it got there, so when you search, it'll pull up all those things that it clicked on throughout its life. In the deep web, and the /dark web, those links aren't readily available. You can't find it, you can't go to it. And so how that all pertains kind of dovetails together. So they say, and different websites give different numbers. No one really knows how much is out there in terms of the internet. So they say about 4% is the surface web, and others say 10% is the surface web. Others that might even say it's 1%, and the rest is what's called the deep web. And then within the deep web is what is known as the dark web, which you'll need special tools and software to actually get to, and we're going to talk about those tools and softwares and how to configure your network to reach it.
Yeah, one of the cool things is there's, if you've used the search engine DuckDuckGo, DuckDuckGo runs two specific search engines. There's one for the surface web as described in this image, and there's also a different version that runs and categorizes the deep web. So after you've gained access to the deep web, you can now run that version of DuckDuckGo on an Onion site and actually start searching what's in the actual dark web.
And there's somebody posted a question. This isn't too much related to actual security, but in the case of hacker culture, you say to have fun is one of the tenets. Is that also where the culture to prey upon and bully people by hacking them came to be, or is that more recent? So like cyberbullying, and I guess that would be entirely different, different animal.
Cyberbullying, any kind of bullying would have, so there's multiple, I guess you can say, deviations of the hacker culture. Some just do it for fun, some do it for personal gain, some do it just to cause pain and torment. They're all different categorizations. They're not all, most of those groups aren't collectively intertwined, so you'll see some hackers that are bullying, and a different hacker group will go after them and publicize issues.
And I think that occurred, I can't remember the case, but there was a cyberbullying instance where a group of hackers then found out who was cyberbullying the girl, and like posted all their personal information online and stuff. And whether that's, you know, a good hurrah or a bad thing, I don't know. But
and you can base this off of, there's the, for better terms, the Ku Klux Klan mentality, where they started to torment people, and the one hacker division, and it specifically was Anonymous, actually went after them, hacked all their accounts, hacked all their stuff, posted all their personal information up to the internet, just because they're not associated by any means. So they will do that. It seems like an odd thing, but there's so many different versions of that culture. They focus on different areas, and a lot of times they don't appreciate or like another area, and they will try to expose that area.
And then somebody mentioned what an onion site is. We're actually going to talk about that now. So in order to communicate over a network for anonymous communication, there's a tool called Tor, and it uses what's called onion routing. And what onion routing is, or what onion servers are, it's where there's multiple sets of servers that you would bounce between in order to get to your end destination. And essentially there's an entry node, so that'll be like your computer. Relay nodes, which will bounce your connection around, so if someone was watching or someone was tracing, they'll be seeing, they don't actually know where you're going, they just know the to's and froms. So if someone interjected themselves inside of a Tor network, they'll only see what the data they're getting and their next hop in the relay, if you will. Tor as a whole is made up of volunteers running relay servers, and so again, no router knows the entire network, so no one can actually backtrack an entire communication stream where data is coming to and from. And Tor is really cool because it can bypass content filtering, restricted government networks. Like if you're in China, you can't get to certain websites. Using Tor will help you get around that, and it's a free tool to download. It also allows people to be anonymous whistleblowers, so they can go into a forum and post something where they probably won't get tracked. And I say probably because I'm going to show you loopholes, but as a whole, you're fairly safe. Tor also allows you to get to what's called an onion site, which essentially is a website that's not accessible from a normal browser, that's not necessarily searchable, and you have to use that Tor network to get to it.
Yeah, and this is where you would get access to that version of DuckDuckGo that does index those onion sites.
And then in terms of the dark web, to communicate to it, you can use like a Tor browser and some other software. You can telnet, IRC, and there's all these other tools that are being made so you can kind of communicate a little bit more anonymously.
Yeah. So if you wanted to gain access to this, you can Google Tor Project or Tor browser, and you can find it. It's really a quick install. You download it, you click install. Once you open up the browser, you'll see it do some weird things where it'll connect out, where Brian was saying it basically hops all over the place, and then makes you appear essentially through that browser out of another country or out of another area, and then it also connects you to this hidden network. So think of this dark web and the regular internet. They're two parallel lines, and they don't intersect with one another. And to be able to get to that second parallel line, you need a tool like the Onion or Tor browser.
So some history about Tor. It originally grew from the U.S. military as a way to communicate without detection. So we actually had spies overseas, and they wanted to be able to communicate to their spies without anyone sniffing the network or tracking those network communications. So they built this tool to make that happen. In 1995, the concept, or actually the wording of onion routing was born, and that idea of hopping between multiple nodes without anyone knowing the entire path was created. The term deep web was coined, and I'm doing air quotes. The deep web was coined in 2001 by a group called Bright Planet, which basically specializes in finding content on the dark web. So if people are selling information or have, I don't know, secrets and whatnot like that, this company called Bright Planet will actually utilize they built their own software and tools to try to find information, track people down, and that kind of stuff. In 2004, the U.S. Naval Research Lab released the Tor code to the public, and in 2006, it's what we now call the Tor Project. So this Tor idea is, in internet terms, relatively new. So it's been getting more of a hot topic, and more people are kind of interested in what it does, given the heightened awareness for privacy. Some cases and some history of what can be done on the dark web or the deep web. So there was a site called, and I forget it now. There's a place where you can basically buy the Silk Road, where you can go on the black market for buying drugs or illegal drugs. And you would basically buy an account that will then allow you, using Bitcoins, to then purchase these illegal drugs. It was built in 2011 in February, where users had to, again, buy their account. And then in 2013 in October, it was shut down by the FBI after they'd arrested a hacker called Dread Pirate Roberts. What was interesting about the Silk Road was after the FBI shut it down, it popped up again a month later by all of its fans and by other admins. They basically rebuilt the website within a month, but then again, it was shut down again. So, and these things, and they say that it might still be out there, it's just under a different name or under a different node, where only the people that were really invested into it know where it's at.
Yeah. So it's really kind of a tip of the hat to the culture, is that if somebody finds that there's a site of value, another one is the Pirate Bay, they will make sure that site is up and running all the time. There's enough people out there, as you can see by the Twitter account for Anonymous, that there's enough people out there that if your server, if you run that server and you've got it well hidden and it for some reason goes down, there's enough people out there that will spend time to make sure it reappears somewhere else on this.
And then, yeah, on the other side of the coin, there's people doing good things. So there was an anonymous hacker that shut down 20% of the dark web to help tackle child pornography. So one of the things that people say is on the dark web is a whole bunch of illegal stuff like child pornography. There was also another operation. So the Silk Web was semi-part of an operation called Operation Anonymous, where the government eventually teamed up with other groups like the European Union, a couple other places all over the world, to basically find all these markets that sold drugs, money laundering, and other contraband. And the way they did it was kind of unique. They injected themselves in as fake servers, and so they would actually rebuild, for instance, the Silk Road and wait for people to log in and buy accounts, and then they would utilize some of the information that was given to them while they were logging in and whatnot to find out who they were. So, you know, if they were using like their first dot last name or something stupid, or finding out what they were pushing in for their shipping address, and they were able to gather information to find out who's doing what and to do like a huge seizure. And so then at one point there was a whole bunch of these little websites being popped up after the investigation where it was saying like this site has been seized on the deep web.
Yeah. One of the tip is if you plan on playing with Tor, make sure you don't use any of your own personal information. Don't put your name out there. Don't put your address. Don't use any of your credit cards, because it floats out there that the dark web is unsecure. So don't think that you can just go out there and do whatever you want. People will get that information.
And so somebody once told me that, and then this would be an incorrect statement, but they use Tor to be private. So when they log into Facebook, no one knows who they are, which is kind of humorous, I guess, because then you're logging into a site that you own with your name on it, with all your social connections. So it completely defeats the purpose. Why did the military release the code for Tor? Have they established another parallel network for themselves? I believe they released the code for Tor so people can communicate privately. That was the intent of it, like, hey, this is a great tool, we should give it to everybody. Have they established another parallel network? That's classified. No, I honestly don't know. They could, and it's conceivable, but the answer to that, I would not be able to tell you. So the cloak of invisibility, and so how can we do anonymous browsing through the Tor project or tools like the Tor project to kind of make ourselves a little bit more invisible where people don't know who we are?
So there's a lot of reasons, and some of the main reasons that you want to use kind of this way to hide yourself is really to hide your geographical location. If for some reason you don't want anybody to know exactly where you're at, you would want to use a private VPN or something of this nature. A lot of people nowadays, if they know your IP address, can pretty much track that down specifically to what location you're at. Also, it's good to prevent web tracking, and the biggest thing here is that your internet provider will track all your activity, regardless of what you're doing, and you can utilize something such as a private VPN to be able to keep them or keep prying eyes away. You want to avoid leaving a digital footprint. If you don't want anybody knowing what you're doing on the internet, you definitely want one of these. And then also you can bypass any bans or blacklisting. We talked about that earlier, but if you're in another country or you're trying to access other countries' websites that specifically block the United States, you can make yourself look like you're in that country so you can gain access.
Or Netflix.
Yeah, or Netflix is a great thing, or cable TV providers. I know some cable TV providers that are in other countries will offer up free cable TV as long as you go to their website. So if you want to do that, you can VPN in and make yourself look like you're from that country. And then lastly, if you happen to be doing illegal activities, you definitely don't want to be detected by any means. So this is a great way to be able to mask all of that.
Michael adds, they released the Tor code to the public so that the people using Tor were not spies, or the only people using Tor were not spies, etc. And that's a good point.
So really, how do you out an 800-pound gorilla? So you're really trying to hide yourself. There's some ways you can do that. You can, one, use free Wi-Fi to hide your location. It's really easy to go to Starbucks and hop on the internet. As long as you don't start using your personal information when you do that, then you can pretty much mask who you are. You can use a secure web browser, very similar to either Tor or Opera, which have VPN functionality built into them, or you can just go out and buy or subscribe to a private VPN. One of my personal recommendations is PIA, Personal Internet Access, which keeps no logs. There's quite a few private VPNs that do keep logs, and if for some reason, someone taps into that network or that specific private VPN company gets hacked, they do have your information saved. There are some that don't. You can go back to dial-up because the best way to be anonymous is to start using technology that no one uses anymore because no one knows how to work it.
Or monitored, for the most part.
Yeah, no one monitors dial-up activity that much anymore. Or you can set up, which is more elaborate, you can set up RF, radio frequency data transfer over CB radio waves. So if you haven't heard CB radio for a long time, this technology is being readapted to be able to transfer data across CB radio waves because there is a radio frequency that's occurring, and you can use those antennas to transmit data across them. You can use something like Kali Linux. There's essentially a boot CD that you can boot up, or you can install this operating system on your computer, and it gives you all the tools to hack someone else's Wi-Fi encryption or just become a hacker just in general. But you can use this tool to hack somebody's Wi-Fi encryption, and you can hack the network's password, the neighbor's password on their Wi-Fi, and start using their password or their Wi-Fi. Or you can set up long-range wireless antennas, which you can get antennas nowadays that you can set up to hit your, maybe you're a couple blocks away from your McDonald's and you don't think you can use their Wi-Fi. You can set up some long-range antennas and actually access their Wi-Fi from your home comfort of your home. So to really hide yourself, you can use private VPN, and like my recommendation is you want one that's totally anonymous. Most of them aren't. You want one that specifically says it does not keep log files. Go through your reviews for the site, because some will claim that, but many still do. They just claim it just for a sales point. So make sure you're verifying it based on user reviews to make sure it's legit. You want to also look at the bandwidth and the available servers. There are a lot of them that are out there that have 1 or 2 servers. Really, that's just going to give you a slow internet connection, but if you go with a bigger provider, you can get a lot faster internet connection. My recommendations are there.
Yeah, and then what's great about with a VPN service, so essentially what the whole VPN allow you to do is you connect, so your ISP will see you connecting to only one location, which will be your VPN connection. And then everything you do while you're connected will be across that connection. So Comcast, for instance, will be like, oh, Brian's just logging into some server in London, and I can be going to Yahoo, Google, Facebook, and all they see the entire time is I'm logging into London. And then that traffic that's over the VPN, so if someone was sniffing my network to find out where I was going, what I was doing, it would also be encrypted. And so you get protected in 2 different ways, I suppose.
Yep. In worst case, you can use free Wi-Fi.
Yeah, so if you wanted to kind of hide who you were, going to like McDonald's or something like that, and using free Wi-Fi, as long as it's a secured Wi-Fi network, you can kind of hide who you are depending on what you're accessing. And so the other option is to use Tor, like we talked about earlier, where it anonymizes yourself. So while you're on the Tor network and you're bouncing around between relays, no one knows where you're actually coming from. And then again, the VPN also helps keep you protected. So how do I navigate and prevent wrong turns? And so we're showing you some cool tools. And there's a really great graph that kind of outlines who the hackers are. And so 90% are your amateurs, your joyriders, and they're also called script kiddies, or script monkeys is the other one, where they're just running free scripts, like through Kali Linux, for instance, and just seeing what happens. Or they're trying to get into a website and they're having fun with it, and there's no, I don't know, real game behind it. They just think they're cool and they want to show their friends. 9.9% they say are your professional hackers, which are like the good hackers, the white hat hackers, if you will. And so Facebook, for instance, will actually give you money if you figure out a security flaw. And I don't remember the ranges, but you can get quite a couple $100 at the very least to find some simple security flaw that allows you to hack into Facebook. And so some people navigate through the dark web to use other tools, or the deep web for other tools, to get like backdoor access, different kinds of access to see what can be broken. And then there's a very, very small percent, 0.1, they say, is the actual cyber criminals that are hacking into somewhere to pull out a whole bunch of data, or selling your data on the dark web or the deep web. And there's tools out there that will alert you if your data is being sold, like haveibeenpwned.com. But that smaller group are the ones that you hear about on the news. So-and-so released all this personal information about somebody on the internet, and when they're releasing it, traditionally they're releasing it on the deep web.
Yep.
And there's a lot of different hacker groups that are out there. You can kind of read about them. Well, there we go. So I took some screenshots of how like a VPN client works. So on a mobile app, it's really simple. Or on your desktop, there's a toggle that you flip on or off, and when you flip it on, you choose which country you want to connect to, and you have your VPN connection. Very, very simple. The way the internet sees you, so I went to my own website where I track who accesses my site. It even boils it down to like age and whatnot like that. It's kind of cool. So most people utilize this. It's Google Analytics. And so I was accessing my website, and it shows, hey, Brian from Arlington Heights. I flipped on the VPN where I said I wanted a VPN into London. Now my website says, hey, Brian, there's someone connecting from London. And I, as the website admin, has no clue that someone's using a VPN connection. To me, I'm like, to the site admin, they're like, wow, someone's logging in from London. And that's what they see, and that's how you can kind of be more secure and private.
Yeah. So this is a great example why there's all this debate about whether or not Russia hacked the election, things like that. Because in theory, you on the phone or us here could have hacked the election and just use a VPN to make us look like we're out of Russia. So it's hard to track that back to where the origination point is, because you personally can, even though you're sitting in Illinois, can make yourself appear like you're in another country and then hack back to a different country to mask yourself.
In terms of speed tests, for the most part, I guess it's twofold. Your speeds usually aren't decreased on a VPN unless you're connecting to the farther away you go, the slower it kind of is. And conversely, if you're using a server that everyone's VPNing into, your speeds will be hindered. So here's my traditional internet speeds. Ping is 13 milliseconds. Download is 118. On a VPN, your ping's a little bit slower because you're bouncing traffic around to get to your ultimate destination. But your speeds, though, aren't really impacted. And so it's, I guess at first, so my original fear with using a VPN is I'll be rocking out with my 100 meg connection and using only 5 megabytes now, which is a waste. With modern stuff today, it's a lot better. So some tools to become a hacker.
Yep. So there's tons of tools out there. So we'll go through a couple of them. You obviously got Tor browser. We talked about that a lot. So Tor browser is going to allow you to get to that parallel universe that runs on the internet. It runs separate from the internet. Obviously, when you're in Tor browser, you can gain access to regular internet resources, but it bridges the link so you can get access to all of those resources that you would never be able to get access to with your Firefox, your Google Chrome, or your Internet Explorer. You've got IRC, which is Internet Relay Chat. This is one of the early ways of being able to chat with each other on the internet, and this is still around. It's still widely used. A lot of the hacking groups still use IRC to coordinate hacking efforts. So in all reality, if you wanted to find out when something's going to happen, you can install IRC and check some of the channels. It works exactly like Twitter. Twitter is a ripoff of IRC. So the hashtags, the @signs, all that's been around since the 80s, and it finally became commercialized, so it's mainstream. You can telnet to a BBS. Like I said, those bulletin board systems never died. You can use what's called a telnet application, and then you can go on Google or DuckDuckGo, search for some BBS addresses, which will be IP addresses, type those in, and now you can access the bulletin board systems that really never died. They just went underground more. Or you can use Kodi, which is that set of tools that we talked about that'll keep you entertained at the least. You can install it as an operating system or use it as a boot CD and be able to access a lot of tools that will actually allow you to do quite a bit of things. You can also get a router that allows for VPN at the router. My specific network at home, I figured it's kind of a pain to always have to click a button and turn on my VPN when I want it and turn it off when I don't want it. So I set up my network very similar to this picture, where I have my cable provider going into my regular router, which is unencrypted and not on a VPN. So if I want full speed internet access and I don't care what I'm hiding, I go on there. But if I want to privatize my network, I have a second router hooked up exactly in the same manner that actually keeps my network secure. So if I want to share videos that I found on the internet with my friend, I can do that on a secure network, because if you happen to go to one of these mainstream websites where you can watch something that's sitting in a theater, if you do that at home on an unencrypted network, you're more than likely going to get a letter from your internet provider saying they're going to shut your internet off.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically a way to keep everything anonymized.
And the way that I like to set up mine is log into your VPN router, switch to your VPN network using the app on your device or the program. So now you're running across 2 different VPNs, and then you can use the Tor browser on top of that. So now you have like 3 different layers of confusion for whoever's trying to track what you're doing.
Yep. keep in mind when you're using Tor browser, so you're not taken by shock. It will feel like you are on dial-up. There's so many people that use Tor that network's pretty congested.
So the other thing you can do to what hackers use, and this is probably more common, is just simple social engineering, where somebody calls somebody else, and this is completely offline, and they just ask simple questions like, "Hey, I'm from the bank. I've noticed that your password's incorrect. Would you like me to reset your password? Or if somebody's trying to hack your account, I can reset your password for you right now. What would you like me to make your password?" And there's quite a bit of people in today's age that are like, "Oh, wow, the bank called me. Yeah, change my password, or here's my existing password. Change it," and they have a simple conversation to kind of find more information about people. The other trick is writing batch files.
Yep, which is an older technology, but still works even today because DOS is still the underlines of the Windows operating system. They've never really gotten rid of it. They kind of it's like the bad child they don't want to speak about. And DOS really allows you to do a lot of things on the back end. So you can write a batch script that will send stuff out. You'll never know it's running. It's hard to detect a DOS or batch scripts running on your machine. One of the good things about social engineering is the biggest thing is to manipulate people. So you'll know you're getting social engineered when people start playing to your fears. They do this quite a lot in the media, where they play to your fears to get you to spend money on other things. And it's not because it may happen to you. And in all reality, if you look at the data, it may have only happened to less than 1% of the population, but they can play to your fears, and when someone plays to your fears, they can usually get you to do about whatever you want. So there's a lot of other tools out there you can get into. You can Google a lot of these, but Metasploit, Nmap, Akinetect, Wireshark, and so forth. A lot of these allow you to gain access. We'll focus on Wireshark at the moment. Wireshark basically is an application that's publicly available that you can install on your laptop, and because your laptop's connected to a network, it can sit and run and monitor all the network activity going on your network. And we used to use this back in college because back in the mid-90s, when the internet first went broadband, nothing was encrypted. Everything was publicly sent out in plain text. So my friend and I would sit on the internet, plug in our laptop directly to the internet, and watch all the network traffic going across the internet for our provider. And basically you would see everybody's usernames, their passwords, what websites they're hitting, everything, because nothing was encrypted back then. Luckily nowadays everything's encrypted, so no one can do it that easy, but it shows you how we've evolved since the 90s.
Another great tool is an operating system that we talked about earlier called Kali Linux that has a bunch of tools and whatnot that allow you to do some pretty interesting things. We actually were looking at messing around with it the other day, and there was a tool called the Hulk. Right. The Hulk, which essentially does a denial of service attack for you, where you can bombard a server from one machine enough to take it down if it's like a 4 gig system.
It's a small server.
It's a small server. And it's 100% free, and it doesn't take too much technical know-how to use it. You just follow the prompts for the most part.
Yeah. Basically, you install the app, you type in Hulk and the website you want to take down, and you hit enter, and it does everything else for you. We've noticed this specific tool get run against the network before and took down some major websites by having maybe 2 or 3 instances of it running.
There's a whole bunch of other resources you can look at and go to. If you wanted to navigate the deep web and play more with it, there's a really great Reddit thread, and they actually built a wiki around it on how to get started, the tips and tricks. Here's the websites to use. Here's like kind of a general list of locations to check out. There's another tool, or it's a search engine called DuckDuckGo, which when you're using it on the normal web, so without a private VPN or without Tor, it allows you to search without being tracked what you're searching. Google tracks everything you do while you use Google. It's why it's free. They make money off of what you do. But using DuckDuckGo, it doesn't track any of that, or so they say. And then if you're using DuckDuckGo while you're on Tor, it'll also help you search those onion sites. So I guess kind of like the big questions are, is it illegal or is it legal? The answer is yes, it's completely legal. People use Tor or private VPNs to maintain their privacy. People that use these types of tools are anywhere from the military, police, to journalists, to even whistleblowers that want to get information out without being tracked who they are. And so those are some great tools for good things. And again, since technology is inherently neutral, people can do bad things with it. So yes, within these networks and within these certain sites, you can get drugs, weapons, etc. They say that you can also get like a hitman for hire, but it's I don't know, a debated topic where most people are saying no, that's probably not true because some 410-pound muscle man isn't logging into the internet to get his hits or to get his clients. But they say that's available. Things you can also do on the dark web is pay for someone's identity to be stolen, and it's relatively inexpensive for the most part. So
yeah. At the same time, you also have to remember people, if you're going on there to use some of these services, there's a little bit of a risk just in general because the people you're paying may or may not do them. A lot of people that put a lot of this stuff up as fake just to get you to give them money. And typically they transact only in Bitcoin. So if you haven't heard of Bitcoin, I would say Google Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is basically a kind of an anonymous currency that once you transact Bitcoin to somebody, you have no clue who you sent it to, and you'll never get it back. So people like to put this type of thing up there just because they're playing to people's wants and desires, and everybody's got a little bit of a fear in them to be able to make sure that it's not getting tracked back to them, so they will use that Bitcoin and assume that risk. And I would say 90–95% of the cases you just lost money rather than getting what you wanted.
Correct. And there's one more question. We'll get to it in a second. But I guess over-encompassing, using the deep web and dark web isn't also just for hacking. It can be used to figure people out, what they're doing. There's a TV show that Justin swears by, Hunted.
Wizards of the Hunted. Yeah. So if you haven't seen it on TV, I would search for. I think it's on CBS. Is called The Hunted, where they basically go in and show you how you can try to make yourself anonymous for, I think it's 28 days and try to fall off the grid. And the government leverages all their technology that they can use to be able to track you down. There was a few tech-savvy guys on there that was using a lot of the technology that we've discussed here and slipped up a couple times, and you'll see as little of a slip up as it is, they can catch that and track you down based on that. So one of the things to keep in mind, it's a great way to show, one, how to use the tools, but also to see it from maybe the law enforcement side to actually see how they're using those digital footprints to track them back to you.
And so if you have any questions, feel free to add them to the chat or reach out to us afterwards. Sean asks, since a great deal of internet traffic occurs at the ISP level, how is your activity tracked given HTTPS websites? Is that through server connections? Isn't HTTPS encrypted traffic? So with HTTPS sites, the conversations and data you transfer from machine to that specific server. So while you're interacting on that server, that data is protected. But if you're downloading something, or if you're uploading something, the ISP can kind of see what kind of is being passed. They'll see like a large chunk of data or small chunks of data.
So even to make it even more simpler, your ISP knows you're going to that HTTPS server.
Yeah.
It's just the information you're transacting with that site is encrypted, so I won't be able to see what you're doing, but I know you're hitting that server. At the same time, you can only track HTTPS, whatever. So if you go to https.msn.com, if you happen to download something, you have no idea whether they're using, and most of the time they're not, encrypting that download back to your machine. So that typically is unencrypted back to your machine. So as soon as I see that, I know exactly what you're doing on that server. So it's very easy. It's not as secure as you think it is, but at the same time, a lot of sites aren't HTTPS, and at the same time, all that's going to do is if you type your credit card number in, it keeps that encrypted, because you can guarantee that's encrypted. Most of those sites are. But on certain things, when you're downloading them back, I know exactly what you're downloading, and exactly when you're going to HTTPS sites, I know exactly what sites you're going to.
Correct. Are there any other questions?
Thank you, Brian and Justin. That was really quite fascinating. Oh, we did get one more question coming in. Do you see it there?
Yep. So HTTPS is mostly to thwart packet sniffing, assuming you aren't downloading, or by downloading, do you mean just the downstream of information?
Essentially, it's if you decide to go in and you download a file. The two-way communication on an HTTPS website is going to be 100% encrypted. You just need to know when you're clicking on the links, some of those links may or may not be HTTPS encrypted, because you can refer people back and forth between between various sites along the way. So just kind of keep an eye out on your URL up in the top bar of your web browser. Just to make sure if you're just working on the site, it'll be all encrypted. But if you happen to click a link, let's say to download a PDF, a lot of times they transact that in non-HTTPS.
And so as Justin mentioned earlier, so if I'm clicking on like 4 different links on an HTTPS site, your ISP provider knows you went to those 4 sites or those 4 links because they're going to see that. But that's what you're typing in, not so much.
They'll just see the headers. They won't see the data that's getting sent to you, but obviously they'll see the website you went to, so it doesn't encrypt the actual site name.
Devil's advocate question. What would you say to someone who is fine with having their info and activity being known online? So me and Justin talked about this before, where I consider using the internet an inherent risk. So if you want to use social media, if you want to utilize the internet and you're posting on or you're using Gmail, nothing's free in this world, and so you're giving up some level of privacy. You're giving up some level of, you know what, they're going to read my emails and I'm fine with it, or my picture's on Facebook so people can search for me. That, I guess, and I accept that as risk. But
yeah, and I say to it is that you only want to post what you want people to know about you. And transact data that you want people to know about you. And in all reality, there's certain activities that, you know, like if you're going to go watch first-run movies on your computer that are still in the movie theater, then yeah, your inherent risk there is that more than likely you're going to get your internet shut off, and worse than likely is you're going to get fined from some movie association. So I guess you just got to look into what level of risk that you want to assume, knowing that you don't have to assume any of that risk at all. It's not required to. Knowing that you have an internet connection doesn't mean you have to just, I've just instantly assumed all of this risk just because. You can sign up for an internet connection and go completely private and you're good. You don't have to worry about anything.
You can use a VPN if you really wanted to. But then you can't post about yourself.
Yeah, you have to remember, using a VPN doesn't prevent people from finding stuff. If you just go on a VPN and use it for public information, it's still going to be out there.
Yeah.
So that's why you see a lot of people that that are computer hackers and so forth never go by their real names, and sometimes it's hard to find the real names. They go by an alias that's hard to track back to somebody.
Yep, because they only use that alias on that stuff. So, for instance, if I had a Xbox Live account name, I wouldn't make my hacker name the exact same Xbox account.
Right. Like I've got a hacker name that I used back in the day, and no one will ever know it, and even Brian doesn't know it.
It's not cybertension?
No, and it's not cybertension.
All right. Well, that's great. I wanted to say is, you know, we know that, you know, libraries are susceptible to these attacks, whether it's their servers or people sitting in parking lots and downloading materials illegally or ransomware, whatever. And so I found this session really interesting to kind of turn it around and understand what hackers are using. You know, because I don't have an IT background, and so, but I hear the news stories, you know, so I thought this was really interesting. Thank you to you both for sharing this today.
And that brings up a good point as well. So you can actually, on modern firewalls, you can block VPN traffic. So if you don't want people to utilize a VPN to do bad things, or good things too for that matter, you can block that from happening. If you don't want people to download or use Tor, or if they already have Tor, to use it on your network, you can block Tor access. It uses a specific port when it communicates on the internet. Yeah. So you can actually prevent people using those tools. And again, but those tools can be used for good and bad. Just depends on the person.
Yeah. So at least to keep your network safe at the library, you can ask your IT guy or whoever your IT provider is to block that type of traffic through the firewall. So at least you can prevent people from leveraging your network. At the same time, sometimes I am leery because we do work at a college and we see the same thing where people will sit out in the parking lot and you wonder what they're doing because they're on their computer surfing the web, and you can beat that. That's one of the ways we discussed on how to be anonymous.
I was at Starbucks the other day and there was a gentleman that looked a little interesting, and he was parked outside on his computer in his car. And so, like, I could have thrown up Wireshark and started sniffing and looking for his traffic, because chances are he probably wouldn't use a VPN or anything, because it's not a well-known tool.
That reminds me, when I was at Dunkin' Donuts, this has been a couple years ago, I walked in, and there was a guy sitting in the middle of Dunkin' Donuts over by my house, and he had a full desktop computer set up, full monitor, everything set up at the table, working off their internet, and I basically snapped a picture of him and came into my class that evening and said, this is probably anonymous.
All right, cool. Are there any other questions?
I haven't seen any come in just yet, but you know, we're coming up to 11 o'clock, so probably a good time to end. So thank you again, Brian and Justin, for your time today and sharing this. I really found it fascinating. I also, you know, we recorded today's session, so I will be processing the recording and posting it on the Rails website shortly, and I will email everyone as soon as that's ready. Part 3 is next week, same time, Tuesday, that's March 7th at 10 a.m. And Brian, I think you're talking about disaster recovery next week?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, so disaster recovery. And I just want to mention, too, that Justin is coming back to do a webinar for Rails as well on March 14th called Leveraging Cloud-Based Technologies, which so many of us are using, and I'm looking forward to that one, too. So so thank you again, Brian and Justin, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.